Oh god. Oh man, that was tough. Hey everybody. This is Tyler here once again from the Character Workshop. Boy, I just had a heart attack from that nostalgia at the opening of this episode. Now you guys are probably be wondering if I'm going to be using that intro for all my videos, and the answer to that, nope. I'm only using this for a one-time occasion, and of course for the purpose of this episode. Now, I am going to be talking about more YouTubers in this episode. Yes, I said YouTubers, with an S. I'm not talking about one this time. I'm going to be talking about a whole entire genre of YouTubers. And that genre will be Thomas fan video YouTubers, I guess you could kind of call it. So for this episode, I will be covering almost every Thomas YouTuber that I have watched on YouTube within the past 13 years since I've been watching Thomas fan videos on YouTube. So I will be covering, who they are, what kind of Thomas content they make, and any fun facts related to them, possibly. Now, the very ironic part, despite the fact that this show is called It Came From England, a majority of these YouTubers that I'm going to be talking about are from the US, so sorry if this isn't 100%, England material, but I mean, they're Thomas fan videos, and Thomas is a UK-made property, so screw it. So the first YouTuber I decided to talk about for this episode is TrainLover476, otherwise known nowadays as Joey Turner. So this guy was one of the first Thomas YouTubers I ever saw, but it wasn't his Toby Thomas and Friends series that got me interested in his content. Back then, between 2006 and 2007, TrainLover would make basically fan recreations of official Thomas episodes. Like, the audio from the actual Thomas episodes would still be there, but like the footage is using his Tomy models. So yeah, that was honestly kind of interesting, Back then I thought it was interesting, seeing a different interpretation of an official Thomas episode being done using a different form of models, I guess you can call it. I don't know. But yeah, that was when I first started watching him. And nowadays, a majority of them have been, removed from YouTube, probably due to copyright, so probably won't be able to watch him anymore, unfortunately. But yeah, that was how I got introduced to him. Now, the one thing he's most well known for, Tomy Thomas and Friends, I honestly didn't start watching it until like 2 years later in 2009. Now, back then, I used to be really into the show. It was, it's basically a more comedic version of Thomas and Friends, but like, using mostly like Family Guy jokes or a lot of other jokes from like, official TV shows or movies or internet videos. But yeah, I honestly liked that kind of stuff back then. Now, what's interesting, unlike the actual Thomas and Friends show, there are a couple of differences of character personalities. First off, most notably, Henry, of course, as you guys all know, Henry in the actual TV show has... I'm honestly not sure how to describe his personality, really. Because, let's face it, after the first couple seasons, like, the writers really have no idea how to portray Henry in later episodes. But Henry in Toby Thomas and Friends is sort of your dumb character type, always has his tongue hanging out, like always making ridiculous noises, always saying ridiculous things, doing ridiculous antics, all that stuff. Now, TrainLover's interpretation of Henry might have been one of the reasons why the series was so popular. From what I've remembered, a lot of Henry's jokes sort of come from, other shows with stupid characters like Ed from Ed, Edd n Eddy, and so on and so forth. That's like the one that comes up the most. Oh yeah, and Billy from Billy and Mandy. I almost forgot about that. But yeah, that was pretty much Henry on Toby Thomas and Friends in a nutshell. Another thing TrainLover did that differentiated between his show and the actual Thomas show was the character Cranky. Now, if you don't know who Cranky is on Thomas and Friends, he's basically, by name, a cranky crane at Brendam Docks. But in Toby Thomas and Friends, he changed Cranky into a completely different character, an angry French guy by the name of Mikey. So, yeah, he was another character that, like, I think got, like, a lot of people's attention on that show. Mine as well. And Mikey was played by another Thomas YouTuber that I'll be talking about after Train Lover by the name of missoliverandblossom, who, of course, gave the character a French accent. And yeah, he was definitely one of the highlights of the show. Kind of still is. You know, missoliverandblossom does a fantastic job voicing that character. But yeah, also one thing I forgot to mention, Henry was voiced by Train Lover 476 himself, so yeah. Now, in terms of production quality, the videos are mostly made in, from what I've seen, Windows Movie Maker. I could be wrong, but then again, he also does use MS Paint for the character's facial expressions, because let's face it, if you were a Thomas fan when you were growing up and you had Thomas toys, you can't really change the expressions of the characters. Like, they just have, like, one face and that's it, so MS Paint did kind of help with that, you know, displaying characters with, like, different expressions, because, I mean, you kind of need characters to show emotions in different situations, so yeah, what else can you really do? But yeah, for several years, Train Lover 476 did a lot of Tomy, Thomas, and Friends content for YouTube. But then, as time went on, he kind of stopped doing them. Mostly because he recently became a part of the My Little Pony community, otherwise known as the Brony community. So, that's probably one of the main reasons why he stopped doing Toby, Thomas, and Friends videos, and honestly, this doesn't bother me too much, although I still do have a bit of nostalgia for his content, but yeah, just, glad to see this guy going in different directions now that he's, you know, a lot older than he was in the past. Although recently I heard that he actually does work for Watch Mojo. I'm not kidding. Now, seeing that I briefly mentioned missoliverandblossom when I was talking about Train Lover, next guy I'm going to be talking about is missoliverandblossom. Now, I discovered him around the same time as Train Lover 476. However, back then I didn't know these two were frequent collaborators with one another. Unlike Train Lover with his Tomy Thomas and Friends series, when I first started watching missoliverandblossom, his TNF series was pretty much the only thing I saw from him back then. So, and back then, you know, I thought it was pretty interesting, you know, unlike Train Lover, who used Tomy Thomas models, missoliverandblossom used Bachman models for Thomas, which, you know, look a lot similar to how the characters looked in the original live-action series, so that was probably what kept me interested the most. I honestly, for a while, didn't even know these kind of things existed, you know, Bachman Thomas models, Hornby Thomas models, all that kind of stuff. And back then, I actually kind of wanted to get those, but seeing how they were very expensive, and I already had, you know, Wooden Thomas, you know, stuff, I never got a chance to get them. But anyways, back on topic with missoliverandblossom. So, his videos, a lot of his earlier episodes didn't really use too many jokes from, like, you know, other TV shows. Like, his original videos sort of feel like, you know, kind of a plot of an actual Thomas episode, just with, you know, a bit of comedy here and there. But yeah, as time went on, you know, in later episodes, he did start incorporating jokes from, like, other TV shows and whatnot into his videos, and yeah, nowadays they sort of became like, you know, Train Lover 476's videos, except, you know, production-wise, slightly better. And because missoliverandblossom and Train Lover were frequent collaborators with each other for videos, it wasn't too surprising that a lot of the voice actors from Toby Thomas and Friends also appeared in TNF. Like, for example, both shows have Emily as a character, and they're both voiced by a YouTuber at the time. I don't know if she's even still on anymore, but her name was Emily the Cutie Pie. She voiced Emily on both shows. Now, what's funny, the Emilys in both shows actually had different personalities. In Train Lovers' Toby Thomas and Friends series, she was sort of a maniac who, hated, Henry and, wanted to go after him and all that stuff. Yeah, she was a crazy character on that show. But in TNF, she was portrayed, kind of similar to how she was in season 7 of the original Thomas show. So, yeah, very interesting that, both of them had different interpretations of Henry. Not Henry. Shit. Emily. Other voice actors that appeared in both Miss Oliver and Blossom and Train Lovers productions would be NCSTL 576, who I think voiced one of the non-face engines from TNF. I think it was Nigel was his name. And then in Toby Thomas and Friends, I think he voiced Duncan. There was also Trainmaster 844 who voiced Daylight in TNF. And then I think in what was it? Toby Thomas and Friends, I think he voiced Sir Handel. Correct me if I'm wrong. Then again, there were a lot of characters on Toby Thomas and Friends, so it's not very easy to remember them all. And Train Boy 7 actually voiced Toby on both shows. However, in Toby Thomas and Friends, Train Lover voiced Toby for a little while up until he decided to have Train Boy 7 voice the character. Now, production-wise, TNF was done in a sort of a different way compared to Toby Thomas and Friends. For starters, I think both of them still did use Windows Movie Maker. Correct me if I'm wrong. But however, with Miss Oliver and Blossom, I noticed for the faces of the engines, he kind of used a different software for that, or at least in his later productions. I think his older ones actually did kind of use MS Paint, but later on he stopped using that and used a different software. So, yeah, in terms of quality, they actually kind of look slightly better than Toby Thomas and Friends. Not to make fun of or diss Joey Turner at all or Train Lover, but yeah, Miss Oliver and Blossom kind of had, better equipments for making videos with. Now, seeing that Train Lover 476 went to the Brony community, that's the same thing that happened with Miss Oliver and Blossom. He did make a brand new YouTube channel to focus more on his Brony content under the name William Meister. And yeah, Miss Oliver Blossom as a channel kind of stopped being active for a while. Up until, the last video that was made was in 2017, and that was the rough draft version of Tomy TNF, which was going to be a big crossover between Train Lover and Miss Oliver and Blossom, but unfortunately never happened due to a variety of reasons. It was supposed to come out all the way back in 2008, but production kept getting hauled, and yeah, it never happened. And yeah, but I'm glad, Miss Oliver and Blossom did upload the rough draft version in honor of the 10th anniversary of his channel, which was 2017, and his channel came out in 2007. So it was nice of him to do that, sort of as a last video for that channel before he completely moved away from it and focused on William Meister. So yeah, that was basically the whole history of Miss Oliver and Blossom. The next guy I wanted to talk about for this video would be Sparkshot, who was the creator of one of the first Thomas fan shows that I've seen on YouTube under the name The Railways of Sodor. Now, I was 10 years old when I first started watching those videos, and at the time, I didn't really understand what was going on at all in some of these episodes, but yeah, however, what did catch me interested in watching, those videos, similar to with Miss Oliver and Blossom with the Bachmann models, Railways of Sodor used Hornby Thomas models, which was essentially one of the first licensed stuff based on Thomas. So, yeah, and they're sort of the UK equivalent of Bachmann, so yeah. And just like with Bachmann, I also kind of wanted to have these as a kid growing up, but seeing that they're from the UK and it's not gonna be easy to import them here in the US, so yeah, I wasn't able to get those either. But yeah, I don't really have much else to talk about with the Railways of Sodor, because it didn't really have very many episodes. It only had 8 episodes, and the guy who made them eventually stopped working on them. So yeah, but they were still interesting and quite nostalgic to me. So yeah, Railways of Sodor kind of holds a special place in my heart.